Okay, we're live for the 30th edition of the Data Value Show. I've been chatting backstage. We nearly missed the start of it, but yeah, I have Jess Haberman on the show. So let me welcome Jess. Hi, Jess. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. So yeah, today we're going to talk about the value of knowledge sharing and other things as well, because we'll probably go off topic. But I normally start with an intro of where I met the guests from. So I think we first met in Boston with Joe and Matt when you were, when in the progress of writing the book. I think it was just soon after you'd made the bold move of saying, okay, I'm going to have these guys write the next best, write the book on data engineering. So yeah, but for anyone else that doesn't know you, because obviously you've moved on, so do you want to give the audience an intro and share a little bit more about your background?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently director of product content at Anaconda, and sort of have been. My prior company was O'Reilly Media, so I was senior acquisitions editor for the sort of data engineering and data science space. So I worked with a lot of the top experts in the field on their books. Got to work with Joe and Matt on fundamentals of data engineering, they introduced me to Chris. And I didn't realize that was their first time meeting you too, was that it was so funny. I was working with Joe and Matt a lot, but yeah, they were pretty far into the process with their book. So at that time we weren't, meeting super regularly. But then I saw Joe on his LinkedIn or something was in Boston. I was like, oh, really? Like, I'm going to a show tonight. Let's meet up for a beer. So it worked out great. But yeah, so these days, so I moved over to Anaconda. They were really interested in developing a learning platform. And so I was excited about that. Learning and data science was sort of what I was really into. And so we worked on that and developed a learning platform, grew out an education team. And since then, sort of moved over to kind of head up more of our content strategy at Anaconda, which is great. Content is my first love. So it's great to be really focused on content again.
It's brilliant, and yeah, I remember that first time we'd met. I think it was the first. Yeah, I'd been talking to Matt and Joe for a while, and I'd flown over to Boston, and they were there as well. So yeah, I think I ended up doing a show live from there as well, and and the rest is history. I think we jumped on many of their shows. I thought, and I think, well, seeing how they done theirs, I've learned from that, and this is where this show's been born from, so to speak.
Yeah, they've done a really good job. I had it on the background while doing some work, but their Monday morning data chats are always really great.
They're always very good, always very informative. So yeah, we got a few points, and yeah, the topic today is the value of knowledge sharing. I like to get the word value and everything now, but we were both at Day-to-Day Texas recently, and there was some great presentation there about how we can train the next generation of data engineers, and if you just focus on yourselves, and the industry is not going to go too far. So it's great for people out there that really are focusing on giving back to the community via whatever, via posts, via content, but also within an organization as well, of how you make content for maybe not just for your tool itself, but for the community that helps with your tool. And I think there's a balance there sometimes with content that gets created, not to be too vendor specific. So yeah, I think the first. So how do you identify what content is relevant to the community? How do you go about looking into that?
Yeah. And well, you mentioned that Day-to-Day Texas. Unfortunately, our talks were scheduled at the same time, so I wasn't able to go to yours. But I do think this is a community of people who are very open and are very interested in giving back and sharing their knowledge and spreading their network. And that's really great, because not every community is that way. And I have to remind myself sometimes that, like, we're very lucky to be in such a good, like, knowledge sharing community where everybody wants to help each other out. I don't see a lot of gatekeeping. I see more often people are really interested, so interested that sometimes, like, they need that help to, like, figure out what is the way to drive value-based content. And I think the most important thing is that it needs to solve a problem, and you need to know you need to know what that problem is, and you need to know your audience, and you might have different audiences. You might have a few different ones. You can't create content for everyone. So you kind of have to focus on who is my primary audience. Maybe you get some of a secondary audience to come along, but it's really important that your audience feels like this content is for me and this solves my problem. So knowing who your audience is really important, and just understanding what their pain points are or what their fears are, and how you can develop content that's going to help solve those problems, and or at least give them the tools to help them solve it themselves.
So as you're saying that, I'm just thinking it's like architecture. When you're designing or coming up with a solution, you need to find the problem. So, and I think some notes I just wrote there is it's a persona. So I think what you're saying is your audience. You see the persona of the people in your audience, and then you write things that are going to resonate to them. So obviously, how do you put yourselves into the mind of these people to see what problems they've got, or how do you get people to how do you get to collate the people's problems and group them up and to see what's going to be the best one to solve?
Yeah, to be honest, this is kind of the easy part. It's just talk to people, it's and maybe talking to people isn't your biggest strong suit, but there are different, you don't have to necessarily like go to the next conference and get in everybody's face and shake hands, and it doesn't have to be in person. All those events are super helpful in terms of sort of getting a sense of what the hot topics are, where the trends are. When you can start to see the patterns much more easily, in my opinion, when you're, in person at an event. But it can just be being on LinkedIn, just making sure that you watch these podcasts, follow the folks that are on these shows, and just listen, and they know their audiences pretty well, folks who are on shows like this. So that's helpful. And then, ask questions, get involved, get into the chat, get into the comments, and pretty soon you'll start to see threads. You'll start to see oh, everyone's having this similar issue, or, oh, everybody's really interested in chatbots, AI chatbots, but they're worried about, privacy and the security of their data, they all start to bubble up. You don't have to be, an acquisitions editor at a publisher to start to see the trends. But yeah, I think that's a good place to be, is get into the conversations where they're happening. That might be on LinkedIn, it might be in person, on Discord, other spots. It might just be in your local meetup. So, I encourage folks, even if I know not everyone is as social and extroverted as you and I are, Chris, but a low key meetup is, I say low key meetup. Ethan Aaron's in New York are huge now, but especially if you've got, or just get some local coworkers, friends together for a happy hour after work, that's a great place to start too, and just share stories. I think a lot of us, especially post COVID, and a lot of us working from home, we're sort of in our bubble a lot. So just try to get outside your bubble wherever you can.
No, some great advice there, and I fully support that. Finding the pulse via LinkedIn, it's how I've met so many great people. It's how how I have some people like yourself on the show is because of that, and also I do support watching these shows, because obviously that would be that's a great idea to do as
well. Chris, you're an expert at getting into the comments, and sort of you insert yourself into the conversations you want to be in, and that's okay. That's what LinkedIn is for. So don't be shy.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's another good point as well, is that getting into interactions, and maybe calling things out when maybe you don't agree, and just generate the conversation, because sometimes you may find you do agree, and you're just looking at things from different points of view. So some great advice. I think this leads me on to something that we just talked about just before we came on the show, was that DevRel, developer relationships. And it's a concept that I hadn't seen during my earlier career of having that as a known activity, development relationships. It was, we've had so many name changes over time with the different people in organization, and the data teams have grown bigger, and so how would you describe dev relations as a function, and who needs one, and and well, what's their purpose?
Yeah. So developer relations, there's so many flavors of it. So I don't want anyone to think that this is gospel because it's not. I'm figuring it out too.
Mm,
I worked with a lot of developer relations folks or developer advocates when I was at O'Reilly because a lot of them were the ones writing books. They're the ones
mm,
kind of like the front facing, the public facing communicator that can help, that is like understanding users problems, that's providing solutions based on whatever their product or service is. So they're the ones, they can be your feedback loop in terms of
mhm,
understanding what developers are dealing with, or where they're running into struggles, and then sharing on the solutions that your company is providing.
mhm,
Developer relations can end up in like a marketing role. It could end up in education. We've done both at Anaconda.
mhm,
They were in product. So the kind of went from product to education to product marketing. So sort of it didn't really change their role that much, but sometimes, sort of you have to kind of figure out the right org structure.
yeah,
And I think one of the hardest parts is how do you define metrics for DevRel? How can you ensure that they are providing value to your company? And that might be
yeah,
number of content, it might be number of presentations at events, it might be or how many signups are they getting into your free products? How are you, ensuring that, like, that is often, I think, the challenge with DevRel is them feeling like they know how they're bringing value to the business. So defining metrics that they can see, that where what they're attaining and what
mm,
happens, and celebrating them, like, is really important. I think it's it's kind of a funky role. It really requires a kind of interesting skill set where you
mhm,
do have to be kind of pretty technical,
yeah,
and or maybe not everyone does, but that certainly helps to be able to
yeah,
really tell
uh,
the story, talk to your users and be able to talk to
yeah.
them in that language, but
Yes, I was going
understand
to say.
the role,
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. You do have to be able to, even though you may not be the best coder out, you still have to speak their language. Otherwise, you may not get the respect from them, and they may not be share as much because they don't think you'll understand it. So, yeah,
Yeah, and, like,
that's
one of those
mm,
hard to measure things is, like, you can help the business speak the right speak the language of
mm,
their users, which, like, that is always a challenge. So, being that feedback loop and being sort of that filter for
yeah.
your work.
I love the mention. I love how you mention the metrics, and there's always data teams, data departments. We have to prove our existence, and
Yeah,
we've historically failed in some areas of that
yeah,
because of the cost versus the perceived value that's been generated from it. And you can argue whether that value had been generated but just hadn't been measured, or whether it wasn't generated at all.
mhm,
But unfortunately, without those metrics, it's just a point of view, and I
yeah,
think that's really really good to define. I think the other thing you mentioned is where that fits into an organization, and the product team. The motivation for working in DevRel is to make sure the features of their products coming out are aligned to what's needed out there, what's going to resonate, and maybe even actually work better or intuitive based on the audience there. So but then putting that monetary value on how much that's generated to that product, then it's if it's agreed up front, okay, well, of our development budget, 5% is going to be spent on this because we know historically we choose the right features, the product becomes stickier
yeah,
or sticky in a good way. I don't like sticky in products. I'm not going to name one out there at the moment, but there's one I'm trying to cancel at the moment, and
uh-huh,
yeah, and they're not playing fair. But
I
I'll
see. Yeah,
I'll leave their name out of it for now. But yeah, you want to be sticky in the right way that your
you're
customers
not
want to
clingy.
stay with you. Yeah, yeah. But then the flip side is, if that DevRel works for marketing, it's different. It's different metrics you're going to need to be capturing,
Mm,
and then there's probably maybe a tendency for the content to be more marketing focused
Yeah, and you can do it. You can kind of have them, with it. So for example, in our product marketing group, you can have them in there without saying, okay, now you got to go like sell the enterprise product. Like that's not what they're doing, but they're building out that funnel for that like profit-led growth, product-led growth, right? So so they're helping users get in, and then you get more users, and then you build up, you have this many seats, you should, you should be looking at our enterprise products, stuff like that. So really helping to build that top of funnel. And even if those are just free users, but practitioners that you're solving their problems, that's certainly what we're trying to do at Anaconda.
Yeah, it's that balance. I think the thing you've highlighted at the beginning is understand what metrics you're going to be measuring the people against. So, they are going to feel valued. They are going to, you can also evidence, which is the thing I like to use, is evidence of the value they have provided, which it will help with securing budgets and making sure it gets the focus it needs. I'm gonna go back to obviously your days at O'Reilly, and you probably saw quite a few book titles, and obviously the one I know the most obviously is the Fundamentals of Data Engineering, and that's been a bit of an outlier on the success probably compared to some of the other O'Reilly titles. So this interesting. So what is the winning formula to creating a best-selling book? And
if I had that formula, I would probably be making a lot of money. Because publishing is gambling. Like you're not gonna get it on every, you're not gonna get it every try. I always say publishing generally, a third of books will they'll lose money. Like they're never gonna get, never gonna sell enough. A third of books break even, and then a third of books sell well.
Okay.
Ideally you get a couple of big sellers like Fundamentals of Data Engineering. They help pay for all the books that didn't work.
Make it.
But it's not like this. It's not like this hyper level growth, kind of business. But it's very rewarding. But I think the sort of things to look for is that that the book is solving a problem, that the ideally you want authors who recognize that the book is not done when they turn in their final manuscript. Like it still needs to be, they need to like really work their network to make sure it gets out there, that the people know about it. Because like, I think there's this perception that like, not perception, like people tell me this all the time. Oh, publishers don't do any marketing. And I think what publishers don't have a network. Like they, generally, like they're a company, like they're, and like maybe there's some companies that you're like, oh, they're really cool, I'm following them because, they're doing interesting things. NVIDIA, for example. But like, a publisher has like technical book readers, that is there, but that's not like necessarily, there's some of that is going to be your audience, but your audience is your network, and they're in their network, so actually up leveling your own network through your publisher can really help you do that. So that is, and your publisher is really there. I'm going off in a total tangent here.
No, this is really good. This is really good.
Is really there for the distribution, for getting your book into like online retailers, into physical retailers, so that like everywhere you go you can find it, that if they have their own platform, that it's there, they get it translated, they get audio, they get all the different formats that like that's I think where a publisher's strength really is. But finding the right thing, I think it's knowing your audience, having a book that, especially if you're in technology changes quickly. So figuring out a way that you can like print something that's going to be relevant for like 3 to 5 years. And then you have this opportunity, if it works, you come back to it and you revise it and you get it back out. And that can like really live a long time and can be really successful. But winning should be again, I'm thinking from the sort of O'Reilly, the O'Reilly standpoint, but it should be practical. It should be hands-on. It should solve a problem. And it should help you upskill. It should help you be able to do the next thing and grow in your career and in your skills, so that I think that's what we always thought of is sort of to like to kind of share more of value than you started with, that you're coming to a book as an author, a good chunk. There's a lot of things you don't know yet. You're driving a lot of value by creating that content, by sharing it with the world, by working on it. So I hope that's a helpful, like not a clear rubric, but I hope that's helpful.
And you're right. If there was a magic formula, I'd be buying it off you, the magic formula as well. So, but and some of the things you said that were quite interesting was there's avoiding buzzwords, and if it's a buzzword, buzzwords come and go, but it's also finding a topic that's misunderstood or not clearly understood.
And you want to know, like, you want it to be trending up, if there's a difference between a trend and a fad, like a fad's not going to last very long. You want something that has got some upward trajectory and is going to last like at least, 5 years. That's very hard to to predict.
To predict in this industry. Yes. Because
you want it to trend, but you do want to avoid the sort of like, I would say jargon, because you really want to speak the language of your users and make it as clear as possible. So buzzwords and jargon are like, you want to be careful around, but you want to also like present you want to be where the conversation is and sort of use that language, and then hopefully evolve it.
It links on to, I think, our special topic we're going to save for the end of the modern data stack, which is I suppose maybe a buzzword, maybe a fad, and there's a lot of talk about that at the moment. But we'll save that to the end anyway, because we'll take some comments on that one at the end as well. I think I'll make people hang around now. They're going to want to hear the modern data stack debate at the end. So I think so. We touched on this anyway. Really, with the other one was the next one was. What's the next best-selling book title? Again, if you knew that, you'd
I did think about this. I did when you and because you presented this question to me, and I was like, I'm gonna need to think about this. This is a hard one. I think I have an answer. I think whoever does the best job at a revised book on Python and Excel is going to have a really strong seller. That's currently in beta with Microsoft Excel, but you can use Python with like in your grid, which is very exciting. Anaconda was involved in providing the Anaconda distribution that it's using behind the scenes, and it's not for everyone, right? Like a lot of Python users are not necessarily like really good to jump into Excel and use pandas in there, but not every Excel user is like, I'm not going that far. I'm not ready. I don't know Python. I'm not interested in learning, but there is like a really interesting community between the sort of like Python friendly Excel people and the Excel friendly Python people. This like Venn diagram right in the middle, where these people are they're voracious. They really want to learn. There's a lot of like new information. This has not been done before. So it's like establishing sort of the book on using Python and Excel, especially as that rolls out into more maturity. Like, that's going to be, I think, a really strong title.
Yeah, and I think the other one is I think you just mentioned earlier, it's the audience, that referenceable audience. There's a lot of people that use Excel, and there's probably a lot of people that wouldn't mind having a dabble of extending or simplifying some of the stuff they do in Excel, which is very repetitive, by just writing about Python. So, and those people are probably VB script and things like that. For writing stuff. So if you can do that with a modern language, I think that is. So if you got David Langer, he's the Excel. Yeah, is that his one? Is that the one he's looking at?
Yeah. So I worked with Dave. So we built a certification, Anaconda certified course on using Python and Excel. You can go to Anaconda Learning and you can take it yourself. It's now available, and it was great. Dave's awesome. He's he's just very good at explaining things. He's just very very methodical. He's interesting. He's funny. So highly recommend. But he helped us develop a lot of content around that sort of beta launch, last August.
Yeah. Okay. So Well, watch this space now. So it will be the what you need the fancy title for it anyway, but it'll be Python. Sorry, Excel and Python is going to be the next big seller.
It could be, I think it's setting itself up to be like, because if you imagine, like, once people really get value out of it, and provided that they do, then it starts to roll out across an enterprise. It starts to roll out across a university, and then suddenly, like, what if people aren't using VBA anymore? Like, then it starts to really, the scale of it is like huge. So it's very early days, and like, who knows? We need to ensure that, but both sort of like the people providing the Python and the people providing the spreadsheets, and then there's Google Sheets. That's another opportunity, like, where that doesn't exist yet and could. So I think there's like a whole world where there's a lot of opportunity there.
I think it's opening up the ability to perform analytics to a wider audience and a wider community. You don't all need to build a modern data stack to go and do it.
And now when Python is so much easier now, and now you've got like an AI chatbot who can help you write Python. So you don't even technically need to really know Python to enable like kind of the power of Python in a spreadsheet. So, we're living in a different world now.
Yeah, we touched on the term co-pilot just before as well, and I think that's it links into this as well. Is if we can use chat, don't depend on it totally. Use it to co-pilot what you're doing and make sure you learn what it's doing as well at the same time. It's then not replacing us; it's complementing us. So I think there's that's how we should be looking at it.
So I agree. Yeah, I think just using AI to enable the things that you're already doing and just helping you do it faster, helping you sort of get past the sticky parts. So it's working alongside you. I think Copilot is a really good brand. And but I do think, it represents like the way we're going to be working more in the coming years.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came up as well when we were in Day Texas, again, like I touched on earlier, was mentoring the next generation of engineers, and we've talked about DevRel being one piece of it, and we touched on probably the social media piece, but this is probably another aspect as well. Is we have to make sure we provide the guidelines of like, yes, we've got generative AI here, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't rely on that to solve all your problems. So so I think the topic was how can we best mentor and educate the next generation of data professionals that's inclusive?
Man, I think we mentioned a little bit earlier about gatekeeping and things like that, which I think this community is pretty good about on the whole, about inviting people into the space. I think it's really important that we hear from diverse voices and that we have experts from all different backgrounds, and that we not just like that we leave space for them, but that we create space for them, and that we really empower them, because like there is a lot of knowledge left on the table when you don't have like women at your conference, or you don't have you don't see like trans people in your at work, at conferences, or in your meetings or things like that. Like, it's really important that that everyone gets not just equal access, but that we really encourage a path, because it helps all of us so much. So that's a big get off my soapbox a little bit for that, but that's a big piece. I think there's a lot of technology is very expensive, and I think it's important to find ways for the less privileged, younger among us, because a lot of us we're all like older people now. All the young nerds, we're all getting old. So making sure that we're creating pathways for young people, and also that we are both giving them opportunities, and making sure that they're teaching us, because they know a lot more. I had to put TikTok off my phone. I can't I'm just get too addicted to things like that. So it's not, but I do have to listen. I do have to pay attention to okay, what's happening? What's the new thing? What are like, what are the kids using AI for? Like, are they in what, I think there's some really cool opportunities there. So just making sure that there's space, and that we're learning from others who are different from us in terms of background, age, gender, etc.
I think it's something you've mentioned. I use the term reverse mentoring. So
Yeah.
bring in the organisation we've built up. We brought on grads and trained them up. And I don't know, I've learned hanging around with them, and I'm meant to be there mentoring them. But it's like,
Yeah.
okay, and there's a lot of value in that, and I think. Getting into my later part of my career of being in data is, I've had the opportunities that allowed me to learn what I have, the battle scars and everything else. So I think it's providing environments that we allow people to learn and well, make mistakes, but in the right guardrails, but not to dictate how people actually work. Is to give them here's some, this is how I would have done it, and you never know. 5 times out of 10, they may show you this is wrong, or that you could do this better.
And then even the example of like writing a book, it is a really collaborative process. It's not just you. It's not, or even if you have a co-author, it's, there's a lot of people involved. If you have an editor, if you should have tech reviewers. So you should be getting like regular feedback. And it's just another way that because you're going to learn a lot writing a book, and like just, making that space to be able to do that. And so you're not just teaching, but you're learning. So I think even writing a book is sort of a reverse mentoring kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I'm fighting. Been a still a long way to go, but we've made some progress myself and Matt on the working title, the high performance data playbook. That is going to be the next best selling title. No, probably not, but anyway, it'll be. I can't wait to finish it. But that'll be another story. But I think we're talking about how we can help. Writing books for with our writing content. I think it is a lot. I think the other one is being real. And I think that was something that I really liked in Jess Anderson's presentation he did, which he's on the show in a few weeks' time as well. But it was, if we are writing content, we're putting it out there, make sure it's accurate and reflects reality. Don't make promises that just aren't possible to achieve. We all need to have goals that we can get to, and maybe saying that if you do this, do that, you can go and get a job for 300 grand as a data engineer. It's probably not the right message to put out there, because there's not every rolling. That's not the norm, and there's plenty of, I think it creates a situation where people are motivated on going into the industry based on the money, or the money they can earn, which is great. We all need to earn money.
Money's good.
But it shouldn't be the main motivation, and I like to say passion should be the main one. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to work in something you're passionate about, you're going to go further. So having that combination of making sure it's passion led, finance backed up, or financial backed up is another. I'm on my soapbox this time about this.
No, it's a great point. I mean, you spend at least 40 hours a week at your job, so you should find it rewarding, and if you're just there for the money, and that's the only reward, that can be a tough slog. So I agree, it's something you're passionate about. Just being with we are really, really focused on culture at Anaconda. So we work really hard to make sure we've got a healthy culture. We've got good people that are good to each other, that are kind, understanding. We don't really have any assholes at Anaconda, which is nice. My language. So I think working with people who can challenge you, who you can learn from, and that you can sort of develop a good working relationship with is pretty crucial.
I think the challenge word is something I always like to make sure there's an environment for that, because you don't want yes people, that are just going to say yes to everything and just go and repeat everything, because that's not going to create an environment for progressing and getting forward.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we're all tech people. You talked earlier about being outgoing, or some people that may not be as social as others. And not saying you can teach yourself to go and do things, but you can push yourself out of your comfort zone, you know. And as I've learned on building this business, there's plenty of things I wasn't that good at and didn't really want to do, but you went and did it. But yeah, so push yourself out of your comfort zone, even if you don't like doing that social thing. Sometimes, yeah, do it with. Go with a wing person, you know, someone that's there that can maybe do the talking, and you can be there doing some of the listening. But just getting out there is on. So I think it's the soft skills that I think are missing. Or teaching people that those soft skills. So I think that's another thing that passing back to community. You could be the best coder in the world, but if you don't focus or get some level of soft skills, you probably won't release your full potential of what you can actually achieve, and you'll probably feel quite frustrated that no one listens to you. But it's probably because you haven't been able to communicate yourself. So
I totally agree. I think building influence is like a really, really important skill, especially if you want to grow your career. If you know, then it's really necessary. And it sounds like you know, I don't know, a little like Slytherin or something, but like being able to like build trust and building trust in an organization, building trust among your colleagues brings a lot of power. It unlocks a lot of things for you, enables you to like be collaborative because people want to work with you. So I think just like, developing your relationships, being proactive about it, just even if it's just like, hey, getting together, maybe you've got a few people in your local region who, you can like, again, just like grab a beer with or whatever. And push yourself out of your comfort zone, or whatever that is. It doesn't have to be meeting people in person, but putting yourself out of your comfort zone, so that's the area where you're going to grow more. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I love the word trust came up there, and I love it's something I like to focus on. And you talked earlier about people promoting their books, or authors promoting their books, and it is the right way, because hopefully that author's built up trust. It's known in the community, and it's much easier to. You'll do much better on sales where that trust is already there. Otherwise, you're relying on maybe word of mouth, so you're trusting someone else. So there's still trust coming into it, but having that trust direct yourself is going to be the most effective. We got a question from Paul Sargent. He's a regular. Hi, Paul. In fact, I'm going to shout out while I pause anyway. We've got Yuri, Ramona, Paul, Val, Ali. So hello, everybody. Paul Sargent, it's a good question here. I'm going to put it up. So it's a question for you there. So let's read it out anyway. So how do you keep coherence of themes in a series of posts and articles with a varied topic? The longer version. Jess's point about focusing on audience probably still applies to a series of posts. Do you have any thoughts on how to manage LinkedIn post media where the objective is to share knowledge and start diverse conversations?
Yeah, that's great questions. I think there's a few different ways to think about the kind of content you create and how it's delivered, and how to have some coherence across those themes. I think if it's blog posts, articles, something like that, and you want to write some things that are related, like outline it. So Dave Langer did a really good series of blog posts on Python and Excel. He did two, actually. And one was sort of data analysis, and one was more like data visualization. And like he knew what he wanted to write was a lot. So it was like, well, let's do a series of posts. They're linked together, but they stand on their own, so that you can kind of jump to the thing that you want to do. Maybe you want to do scatter plots and you want to jump right into like the second of the series. So So he does it nice. That's a good example of, and you plan ahead of time. You outline it, what you're going to cover in each. You can decide whether how you release them. I think generally like, oh, I'm gonna release once a week. And then if you've already got that all planned and already written, then that makes it a lot easier. And then, and then you get feedback on each one and maybe you make an adjustment and things like that. So that's a good way to have. Series is like a really good concept in terms of publishing and writing content, because like it helps you kind of create sort of a template, and then you can start to and you start to see what works, and then you repeat it and repeat it. So so books are like that, blog articles, things like that, so that you're repeating the structure, not necessarily the same messages, but then you start to grow your audience because they're like, oh, I like the structure, I like the way they write, like, and this is a topic that interests me. There's other areas like LinkedIn. You don't necessarily have to have that much coherence across. Like, I think
Good,
you want
I don't.
no, look at Chris, for example. I think you want to know, how do I want to use LinkedIn? Is this purely professional? Is it purely personal? Is it a mix? Is it, oh, I only go on LinkedIn to look for jobs? Like decide sort of who you are on LinkedIn, what your like persona is, what your brand is. And maybe you try things out, maybe you don't know, but you can start to see like what works well, and start to like build out around, start with a, if you want a niche, like you're like, oh, I want to be the one who talks about this thing, and then start to build it out a little broader. That can be really effective, especially if people start to recognize you as an expert. And I don't mean like a top voices LinkedIn expert, because I have a lot of feelings about that. But again, like that's a whole other thing.
I had one of the lollipops. I had one for a bit, but then I just didn't bother maintaining it. But it was.
I don't love the kind of interaction that they value. I think they're asking you for a lot of free content, and the amount of time it takes to build out, like for a top voice badge. I mean, come on. I think there's like there's two different kind of badge. I don't know.
Yeah, there's the real badge. There's the blue one, which I'm not too sure the criteria, but the people that get then, I know now they justify them. They're big names, and Greg being one, Zach being another. So
yeah,
I'm gonna.
They rolled out a whole bunch of them. They're like, you get a badge, you get a badge, you get a badge.
Yeah. But the yellow ones, which are go spoiler alert. How you get them is just by commenting on some articles that have been generated, AI generated articles that LinkedIn have created, and I would say it's actually pretty easy to get. I did one article, put 2 comments on. 3 comments on it.
Oh,
I got the badge. That was it. So maybe I got in the early days, or maybe my comments were really good. I think it's probably the early.
Yeah, I think like if you're gonna spend if you were gonna create content and not get paid for it, be sure it's serving like your brand, your goals, and not LinkedIn's goals.
No,
that's my recommendation, because that's going to be more effective, and it's going to be your audience. It's not going to be, and sort of help you grow your own stuff. So, I think that you want to build your voice, like you want to, and again, I encourage people to like play with different things and like try something different, or maybe every once in a while you put on a post that's like really more personal, and that can stand out a lot if that's not commonly what you're posting. But and then when you're, if you've done all that, and then when you're ready to share like, oh, like, hey, I'm hiring, like you're going to get a lot more, you're suddenly getting a lot of attention because people start to know you and they're like, oh yeah, I'd love to work with this person. So, I don't think it has to be super coherent across your different posts. It's a good place to explore and try new things. And then, when you start to have like a Medium or a Substack, it is like, that's another one where you gotta kind of pull it in a little bit. You gotta figure out, maybe it's not one topic, but it's like, you want to be all in the same sort of ecosystem. You don't want to start like bringing in random personal posts and stuff, like, because that will not be coherent. You want to like build your subscriber. These are people who are like, I'm subscribing to this person because I like their voice and what they have to say. So you want it to be predictable. You want to sort of like, and you want it to do a lot of it, So I fully encourage people like outline stuff, plan a bunch of things, have an editorial calendar for yourself where you're like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to do one a week, and like plan it out like months in advance. So then you're ready to go and start keeping it repetitive, and make sure it's something that you can do. If you can't do once a
Yeah.
week, or you can't do three
Yeah.
times a week, don't, do what you can really do, but stay with it.
And I'll show you my LinkedIn journey. And at the beginning, it was, the use of LinkedIn changed. Originally, it was just to go and get a job, and it was keeping in touch with the contacts that I'd known over the years. Then it evolved. Obviously, we started the business, and we wanted to get credibility, get trust, and it used to like oh, okay. I'm not sure. It was very pre-thought. So okay, right, I'm going to do 5 tips on this. Okay, right, put the 5 tips, and I'd be worried about, okay, I'm going to get challenged on that. Get people to check it, and then then that would build out. So I think I started off with then I broke down each tip in a post. So but it was a lot of work and a lot of thinking, and I was thinking, I'm going to run out of things to say on LinkedIn. How am I ever going to be able to keep posting every week? Because after I've done these 5 different topics with 5 different tips, I've got 25 posts. I'm done. What's next?
Yeah.
And someone taught me or shared with me that you think about what you post as your turkey. All right, you're just dressing it up different. So do a turkey sandwich, do a turkey casserole, do a turkey curry, whatever other turkey recipes you can think of. But then it's your turkey's your thing. How you describe it, what you're doing it. But you even saw the turkey. You tasted some turkey that didn't taste good. Whatever. But the conversation circles around that. And I think what I found is those days of doing that prescription. I now it is a pulse. If I see something on there that annoys me, or has happened that way, get out of it. And then sometimes I'll do some selfies with Joe or with Ethan or someone. But it's the balance. And I think if I just put selfies out, I think I'd probably annoy everyone. But
if like you don't want to be, kind of like in a vacuum publishing content. Like you want you want people's feedback to help generate more. You want people in your network who are talking about something interesting. You want to like piggyback on that. Like it doesn't have to be like all your own, original ideas and like this is the plan I put together and I'm sticking to it. Like, you want to like pepper in other sort of, and if you're building your network and you're paying attention to people in the space, and like that's going to happen pretty naturally. Like it's not hard to sort of be like, oh yeah, so and so had an interesting point. I'm gonna write about that, and then you get inspired, and then you start to feel like, you're part of the conversation. You're part of the the community. So I don't want anyone to think I'm like, nope, I have to outline everything very carefully before you use it.
No, but having some loose structure that you can base it around. But the advice was very good actually. I mean, and there's probably some stuff I'll take from that as well. And it's sort of how Matt have been trying to do the books and the chapters of the book, the titles of each of the chapters, and how it all links together. In fact, I did a picture the other day of like how each of the chapters just link to each other from a Venn diagram, just to see how the entry point. That's just how my mind works a little bit. But there's some great tips. I think seeing that we're talking about what's a common thing at the moment, or what's trending in discussion point, and I think the common is the modern data stack is dead. Is even though it's been dead a few times, but they kept getting brought back from life support. But this time I think with Tristan's post, who's from DBT, Joe's obviously done some follow up on it. I think Ben Stansill's done another one as well. So it's a common topic at the moment. And so I'm going to start, because otherwise I'll go full rant. And seeing that you're the guest, I need to be asking you. So what's your view on the modern data stack, and did it need to die?
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think that I have 2 opinions. I have probably more, but 2 I'll share for now. One is that unfortunately it was like a really poorly named trend don't put modern in front of your like anything that you name, because pretty soon it won't be modern anymore. And so it was so like it wasn't super clear what it meant. So I think that's where you get into a tricky space, like keeping up, like never mind the actual technology, is like keeping a trend going. Like it already kind of set an expiration date on it by calling it modern. So and then I think the other piece is like it's sort of naturally kind of a lot of these trends will kind of like be relevant for a couple of years and then start to die out. And this to me had started, again, I'm not a data engineer, so like this is very much from outside in. Take it with a grain of salt. But it had started to really fade from the conversation like kind of a while ago, like kind of before data mesh. And then like data mesh happened and then Gen AI happened, like, so it's like a couple trends ago. So it was very smart for Tristan to be like, my trend is dead, like, that's it's hard to argue with. But then Tristan has built this, this, I love Tristan. This is no shade. But he says something like that, and then he's part of this bigger community, and then they tack on like Joe's like, oh, I'm going to write about that. Ben, I'm going to write about that, and I don't know who came first, but that's my guess. Is
I'm going to write about it as well, just because everyone else is,
Yeah, like I'm going to put the statement out there, and then he controls the narrative again. So it was really smart on his part to kind of like, just under like kind of be able to reflect on the evolution of modern data stack and like, so that's, I hope that's chill enough to say. But
and I think the topic we were talking about just before we started the show was, in each of these eras, we had the data warehouse era, we had the big data era, we had the modern data stack era. They're all a fundamental change in technology, or something fundamentally changed for one era to end and another begin. The data warehouse, obviously the beginning of it. It was the technology that was available then the big data, Hadoop, and then the modern data stack. All these components that Tristan mentioned brought together to give you that stack. I think we were talking earlier about what's really changed now to go forward into this new era. I think it had served its I hate the term postmodern data stack, because it's just we're going to have post after that, or where's it go? I did before have comments of it. You just give it a version number. It's modern stack 2.0, 3.0, and I even joked that it should be like 10.1.2 because that was a good Oracle version. It instills stability. You think, look at it, oh, that must be a stable version. It's it's double digits now. But I think we're moving into the Copilot data product, data stack, or whatever you want to call the last bit, because it's all about simplification and orchestration of the products, or the piece under it. And I think the other thing is consolidation is going to happen. You'll have less pieces of the puzzle, or ideally you'll have less pieces of the puzzle. That's going to happen from two routes. One, the natural sort of the big players providing more and more of that functionality means you need less additional tools. It will be the stage where you can just run a Snowflake stack. There'll be no other tools you're using on top of it. I'm sure that day's not far along. It's everything is just credits and consumption on Snowflake, but you're just using their orchestration or their containers or whatever pieces in the puzzle. So I think moving into the Copilot era, consolidation or Copilot. I'm not sure which I'll go with, but I think I'll probably do some.
Well, you said another interesting word, which was consumption. Are we in the consumption era? Like where it is all tokens and data and like more of it and more, and how do we scale that? How do we build the foundation for a lot of compute? How do we reduce compute? Like, there's a lot of like, there's that whole era sort of happening.
And I think on that consumption, I mean, the whole consumption world was built based on Snowflake's credit approach that they went with. And I had Kent on the show the other day, and obviously he was there at those beginning days. And it's very hard to move. Well, the only way they were able to achieve that is they had to compare it to something, because otherwise I've got these red beans. What are they worth? I don't know. You know, how much am I going to pay for them? I don't know. What can I do with them? But the Redshift that was out there, which is obviously that one level for it, you're paying for a machine for a certain time slice. Okay, I can understand that. I'm paying for a machine for a certain bit of time slice. I know what that machine did because I had one under my desk that did a similar thing. Whereas Snowflake was able to say, okay, well, it costs this much on Redshift, this many credits. So this many credits, okay, that we charge this month is going to give you the workload that something else would have cost a lot more. So take that into the the world we are now of the.
I do like the Copilot too, because it does like it's about a lot more than technology. It's about how our working style is changing, and that is like, you think about that as more of a long, a long range trend. So I agree with that. I think that's outside of just the Copilot technology itself, right? Or Copilot product. I think that's cool. I think it's great. It's also less fearful than AI is taking my jobs and robots are taking over.
No, it's making us. I think I'm not this old, but I mean the comparison is like the punch cards days of you're doing your programming and just punch cards. I never had. No, I'm not that. I may look that old. I'm not that old, but that was simplified when you could compile things there and then. You didn't have to go and wait for time to go and compile your code. Did we all lose our jobs in it? No, we just were able to do more beneficial things with more value for all the customers and to move forward. So,
and we're seeing a little bit of the hype start to like downturn too. There was all this like, Gen AI is going to be everything, and you're starting to see like, okay, like we see where it's useful in some cases, and there's a lot of potential still, but I think we didn't suddenly like fly to the moon or whatever with with AI.
No, he didn't.
I don't know. I know nothing about space, so.
Look, we're coming towards the, and I've got a hard stop. I've got to go another one straight after. So, but first of all, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Been a great discussion and great insights. But if anyone wants to find out where they can catch up your next event you're going to be, or anything else you want to share?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. Definitely. And if you're, if you're I'm still managing our learning platform. And if you're a trainer and you like to do content or courses or anything around data science, Anaconda, please get in touch. Would love to bring in some more trainers. And keep in touch. It's exciting times, lots happening. And it's been a real pleasure to be on your show, Chris. Always a great conversation.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to say, I have actually got Malcolm on next week. So Malcolm, you caught up with Malcolm when we were in.
Malcolm's great. Always always good to hear his opinions.
High energy. So that'll be a good one for next week. And I think so I've got Skid coming up for anyone that hasn't already heard about it anyway. So if anyone wants to, well, we've only about 2 spaces left actually, so you better get in if anyone wants to get in. Come along for that. It's www.skiersindata, 1st of March in Switzerland. So find us there, or I think we're in London for a data meetup on the 7th of March. So any of the audience that's about then, you'll catch me there. All right. Well, Jess, thank you very much. It's been a great chat as always. I'm sure we'll catch up again, probably with a pint next time somewhere.
That sounds great.
All right. Brilliant, Jess. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all.